The Great Hall on Viridian Prime was bigger than most cities. 847 different species had sent their best leaders to this meeting. The air was thick with different smells and sounds as creatures from across the galaxy talked in their own languages. Admiral Park Ji-won sat quietly in the human section. She wore her dark blue uniform with simple badges. Next to her, Ambassador Lee Haeon looked through his papers one more time. They had come here to ask for mining rights in the Outer Rim. It was a simple request that should have been easy to approve. The humans had been good neighbors for over 200 years. They traded fairly, helped sick planets, and never started fights. Their ships carried medicine to distant worlds, and their scientists shared new discoveries freely. Most species liked dealing with humans because they were honest and peaceful, but some of the younger races saw this peace as weakness. Prince Velther stood up from his golden chair. He was tall and covered in dark scales that shined under the hall's lights. His red eyes looked at the human delegation with disgust. The Draconian Empire had grown powerful in recent years, and the prince thought his people were better than everyone else. Why should we give these weak creatures more mining rights? Prince Velther said loudly. His voice carried across the huge hall. Humans are barely more than animals. They should be happy with what they already have. Many of the younger species laughed and nodded. They had never seen humans fight. They only knew humans as peaceful traders and helpful scientists. To them, humans seemed soft and harmless. High Consul Mordek joined the mockery. He was the leader of the reptilian hegemony, a group of warlike planets that wanted to expand their territory. His voice was like grinding rocks when he spoke. The humans ask for more space when they cannot even defend what they have, Mordek said. Perhaps they should learn their place in this galaxy? More laughter filled the hall. Admiral Park Ji-won's hands tightened into fists, but she did not move. Ambassador Lee Haeon kept his face calm, but his eyes grew cold. Then Elder Kethmoran stood up. The ancient being moved slowly. His skin looked like old leather, and his eyes had seen 50,000 years of galactic history. When he stood, the entire hall became quiet. Even the youngest species knew to respect the elders. They were the oldest living creatures in the galaxy, and their wisdom was legendary. You laugh at the humans, Elder Kethmoran said. His voice was soft but carried to every corner of the hall. You call them weak. You say they cannot defend themselves. But I remember the last time someone thought this way. The hall became even quieter. Many species had heard old stories, but few knew the details. The Vorth were a proud warrior race, the elder continued. They had the strongest ships and the best weapons. They conquered planets for fun and thought themselves unbeatable. They looked at humans the same way you do now. Prince Velther rolled his eyes. Ancient history, old one. The galaxy has changed. Elder Kethmoran turned his ancient gaze to the young prince. The Vorth said the same thing. They attacked a human colony ship in 2156. 300 families died, including children. The humans asked for justice. The Vorth laughed. The elder paused and looked around the hall. 6 months later, the Vorth species no longer existed. A chill ran through the gathered delegates. Everyone knew that the Vorth had vanished from history, but most thought it was due to disease or civil war. The humans did not fight like other species, Elder Kethmoran said. They did not seek honor or glory. They did not follow the old rules of war. When their children died, something changed in them. They became something else. Admiral Park Ji-won remembered the stories her grandfather had told her. Stories that were not in the history books. Stories about what humans could become when they had no other choice. The humans hunted every Vorth ship across the galaxy, the elder continued. They found every Vorth planet and base. They did not just defeat the Vorth military. They made sure that no Vorth would ever threaten anyone again. Ever. The hall was now completely silent. Even the translation machines seemed to whisper. I was there, Elder Kethmoran said. I saw what humans become when they stop being peaceful. I saw their ships move like ghosts through space. I saw their soldiers fight like they had already died and had nothing left to lose. I saw them turn. war into something that other species could not understand. Prince Velther laughed, but it sounded forced. That was over 200 years ago, Elder. Humans have been soft merchants and scientists ever since. They have forgotten how to fight. Elder Kethmoran shook his head slowly. You think they forgot? Look at them now. Really look. The delegates turned to stare at the human section. Admiral Park Jiwon sat perfectly still. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes were like deep space, dark and cold and full of things that moved in the darkness. Ambassador Lee Haeyan smiled politely, but something in that smile made several delegates uncomfortable. Humans do not forget, Elder Kethmoran said. They remember everything. Every kindness and every insult, every friend and every enemy. They have been peaceful because they chose to be peaceful. But choice can be changed. High Consul Mordek stood up angrily. Are you threatening us, Old One? Humans are weak. Their ships are slow, their weapons are simple, and their soldiers are soft. Their merchant ships carry weapons that could crack planets, Elder Kethmoran replied calmly. Their simple weapons can kill from distances you cannot imagine. Their soft soldiers train every day for wars they hope will never come. You see what they want you to see? Prince Velther had heard enough. Even if this is true, humans are outnumbered. There are hundreds of species in this galaxy. Humans are just one small race. Elder Kethmoran looked at the prince with something like pity. The Vorth outnumbered humans 1,000 to 1. It did not matter. When humans fight, they do not fight like individuals. They fight like a single creature with billions of arms and one terrible mind. Ambassador Lee Haeyan finally spoke. His voice was calm and polite, but it cut through the air like a blade. Honored delegates, we came here in peace to make a simple request. We see that this request is not welcome. We will withdraw it and return to human space. He stood up slowly. Admiral Park Jiwon stood with him. The other human delegates rose. As one, moving with perfect coordination. We thank you for your time, Ambassador Lee said. We hope that wisdom will guide your future decisions. As the humans walked toward the exit, Prince Velther called out mockingly, Run back to your safe. Little worlds, humans. The galaxy is too dangerous for weaklings like you. The humans did not turn around. They did not respond. They simply left. Elder Kethmoran watched them go. Then he turned to face the hall full of young, arrogant species. His voice carried the weight of 50,000 years when he spoke his final warning. I have told you what I have seen. I have warned you what humans become when they are pushed too far. When they return, and they will return, remember that I tried to save you from your own foolishness. The elder gathered his robes and walked slowly toward the exit. As he passed Prince Velther, he stopped and looked up at the tall draconian. Your species is young and proud, Elder Kethmoran said quietly. So were the Vorth. Learn from their mistake, young prince. Some sleeping beasts should never be awakened. Then the elder left, leaving behind a hall full of delegates who thought they understood power. They would learn soon enough that they were wrong. They would learn that there was a difference between strength and the terrible thing that humans called necessity. In the empty space where the human delegation had sat, the air still seemed to vibrate with unspoken warnings. But the young species were too proud to listen and too arrogant to learn. The war had not begun yet. But in that moment, when the humans walked away in silence, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The balance of power had shifted. Though none of the mocking delegates realized it yet, they would realize it soon enough. Captain Kim Tae-young checked his ship's cargo one more time. The Soul's Pride was a simple merchant vessel, built for long trips between star systems. In its hold were medical supplies, food packages, and emergency equipment heading to the colony. World of Kestrel Prime. A plague had hit the planet, and people were dying. Kim had been making supply runs for 15 years. He was a peaceful man who believed in helping others. His crew of 47 people shared his values. They were teachers, doctors, engineers, and farmers who worked on merchant ships to see the galaxy and help where they could. Dr. Choi Minji was one of these helpers. She was a xenobiologist who studied alien diseases. She had spent 3 years on Kestrel Prime before the plague started. Now she was going back with medicines that could save thousands of lives. Her research had helped cure diseases on 12 different worlds. The ship moved quietly through space toward the Draconian border. This route was the fastest way to reach Kestrel Prime. Kim had used it many times before without problems. The Draconians usually ignored human merchant ships, but things had changed since the meeting on Viridian Prime. Prince Velther had returned to his empire angry and embarrassed. The Elder's words had made him look foolish in front of the entire galaxy. He needed to prove that humans were weak and that he was strong. He ordered his fleet commanders to be more aggressive with human ships. "Search every human vessel," Prince Velther commanded. "Find reasons to delay them. Show them that we are not afraid of their empty threats." Commander Thekanol received these orders with worry. He was an old soldier who had served the Empire for 40 years. He remembered stories from his grandfather about the Fourth War, but orders were orders, and he began stopping human ships for routine inspections. At first, these inspections were just annoying. Human captains would wait patiently while Draconian soldiers searched their ships. They would answer questions politely and pay small fines for minor violations. The humans never fought back or complained loudly. This peaceful response made Prince Velther even angrier. He wanted humans to show fear or anger. He wanted them to prove they were weak. Instead, they acted like the inspections were normal business. "Make the inspections longer," Prince Velther ordered. "Take some of their crew for questioning. Show them what happens when they enter Draconian space." Princess Anya Velther watched her brother's growing anger with concern. She was smarter than the prince and had studied galactic history. The Elder's warning bothered her more than she wanted to admit. "Brother," she said carefully, "perhaps we should be more cautious. The humans have not responded to our actions." "Yet this silence worries me," Prince Velther laughed. "You sound like that ancient fool. Humans are cowards. If they were strong, they would have fought back by now." But Princess Anya had noticed something strange. While Draconian ships were harassing human merchants, human military vessels had started appearing in nearby systems. They claimed to be on training exercises, but their movements seemed too organized for simple practice on Earth. General Rusanho was indeed organizing training exercises, but these exercises had a specific purpose. He was preparing his forces for a war that he hoped would not come but expected anyway. "How long since the last report from the border?" General Ru asked his aide. 6 hours, sir." "The Draconians are getting bolder. They held the merchant ship New Tokyo for 16 hours yesterday." General Ru nodded. He had been expecting this escalation. Young species always tested boundaries. The question was how far they would push before realizing their mistake. "Continue the exercises," General Ru said. "Make sure our ships are visible on long-range sensors. Let the Draconians know we are watching." The Soul's Pride entered Draconian space on a Tuesday morning. Captain Kim expected another routine inspection. He had been stopped 3 times in the past month. Each time he had waited patiently while Draconian soldiers searched his ship and questioned his crew. But this time was different. Commander Thekanol was not leading the inspection. Instead, a young Draconian officer named Captain Zethmar was in charge. He had been ordered by Prince Velther to make an example of the next human ship. "Human vessel, prepare to be boarded," Captain Zethmar transmitted. His voice was full of arrogance and excitement. "We comply," Captain Kim replied calmly. "We are carrying medical supplies to Kestrel Prime. People are dying from plague." "Your cargo will be confiscated for inspection," Captain Zethmar said. "Your crew will be taken for questioning." This was not normal procedure. Captain Kim felt his stomach tighten with worry. "Sir, these medicines are urgently needed. Can we arrange a faster inspection? Human scum do not make demands." "Captain," Zethmar shouted, "you will surrender your ship and crew immediately." Dr. Troy Minji was in the medical bay when the Draconian soldiers boarded. She was checking the temperature controls on the vaccine containers. If these medicines spoiled, thousands of people would die on Kestrel Prime. "Please be careful with Those containers, she asked politely when the soldiers entered. The vaccines inside must stay cold. The draconian soldier looked at her with disgust. Dr. Choi was small and gentle, wearing a simple medical uniform. To the soldier she looked weak and helpless. "Shut up, human," the soldier snarled. He deliberately knocked over one of the vaccine containers. The precious medicine spilled across the floor. Dr. Choi watched in horror as months of work and thousands of lives worth of medicine was destroyed. But she did not shout or fight. She simply knelt down and tried to save what she could. This calm response made the soldier angrier. He wanted to see fear and desperation. Instead, the human woman just quietly tried to save her medicine on the bridge. Captain Kim was forced to watch as his ship was searched and his crew was arrested. The draconian soldiers were not just looking for contraband. They were destroying things for fun and treating his people badly. "Why are you doing this?" Captain Kim asked. "We have broken no laws." Captain Zethmer struck him across the face. "Because you are human scum and this is draconian space. You exist here only because we allow it." The inspection lasted 12 hours. By the end, half the medical supplies were destroyed or contaminated. 20 crew members were taken to draconian ships for questioning. Dr. Choi Minji was among them. Captain Kim was allowed to leave with his damaged ship and remaining crew. But he was warned that next time, the consequences would be worse. The soul's pride limped toward human space. Captain Kim sent a message to Earth Command describing what had happened. He tried to stay calm in his report, but his anger showed through his professional words. "They took Dr. Choi," he said at the end of his message. "She has saved more alien lives than most people save in their own species. They took her because they could." The message reached Earth 12 hours later. Within minutes it was on the desk of every important human leader. Admiral Park Ji-won read it 3 times. General Ru Sun-ho forwarded it to his fleet commanders. President Yoon Ji-young called an emergency cabinet meeting, but the official human response was measured and diplomatic. Ambassador Lee Hae-yeon filed a formal protest with the Galactic Council. Earth imposed economic sanctions on the Draconian Empire. No threats were made. No military action was announced. Prince Velther was delighted when he heard about the weak human response. "See," he told his sister. "They complain to the council like children crying to their parents. This proves they are cowards." Princess Anya was not convinced. "Brother, their response seems too controlled. When someone hurts you, you get angry immediately. But humans are not angry. They are doing something else. What else could they be doing?" Prince Velther laughed, planning to file more complaints. Meanwhile, Commander Thekanol received reports from his intelligence officers that worried him greatly. Human merchant ships were suddenly avoiding Draconian space. Human scientific expeditions were canceling visits to Draconian worlds. Human companies were quietly ending business deals with Draconian partners. "It is like they are preparing for something," one intelligence officer reported. "But we see no military buildup." Commander Thekanol studied the reports carefully. The human response reminded him of something from old military stories. It was what armies did when they were about to go to war but wanted their enemies to feel safe. On Earth, General Ru Sun-ho was reading reports from deep space reconnaissance. Human ships that had been trading in Draconian space for decades were sending back detailed information about military bases, supply lines, and population centers. "How long have our merchants been gathering this intelligence?" General Ru asked. "Since we first made contact with the Draconians, sir," his aide replied. "Standard procedure for all species we encounter." General Ru nodded. Humans had learned long ago to prepare for every possibility. They hoped for peace but planned for war. Every merchant ship, every scientific expedition, every diplomatic mission gathered information that could be useful if fighting started. "Dr. Choi Minji," General Ru said quietly. "How long has she been working in Draconian space?" 3 years, sir. She has treated over 10,000 Draconian civilians for various diseases, and now they have taken her prisoner." General Ru's voice was ice cold. "Send a message to Admiral Park. Tell her the Draconians have crossed a line they should not have crossed. The colony world of New Bizan was peaceful on the morning everything changed. Children played in the green fields between the farms. Farmers worked their crops under the warm sun. In the small cities, people went about their daily business, trading goods and sharing news from other worlds. Colonel Nam Sojin stood on her office balcony, looking out over the capital city. She had been the planetary defense commander for 6 years. It was usually a quiet job. New Bizan had no strategic value and no rare resources. It was just a farming world where 2.3 million humans had built simple, happy lives, but Colonel Nam knew that everything was about to change. The message from Earth Command had arrived 3 days ago. It was short and clear. Draconian invasion fleet detected heading toward New Bizan. Evacuation not possible. Hold as long as you can. Help is coming. Colonel Nam had not told the civilians about this message. There was nowhere for them to run, and panic would not help anyone. Instead, she had quietly activated the planetary defense plan that every human colony practiced, but hoped never to use. Mayor Oh Dongwook knocked on her office door. He was a kind man who had led the city for 8 years. He cared more about harvest, festivals, and school programs than military matters. But he was not stupid, and he had noticed the unusual activity around the defense centers. Colonel, Mayor O said carefully, my people are asking questions. They see soldiers moving equipment. At night, they hear stories about military ships in the outer system. What is happening? Colonel Nam looked at the mayor for a long moment. He deserved to know the truth. The Draconians are coming to invade our world, she said simply. They will arrive in 2 days. Mayor O sat down heavily. How many of them? Intelligence. Estimates 400,000 soldiers. 200 ships. They expect to conquer us in less than a week. And we have? 15,000 active defense personnel. Another 50,000 reserves, the usual planetary defense weapons. Mayor O did the math in his head. The numbers were terrible. So we cannot win. Colonel Nam smiled grimly. Mayor, you are thinking like a civilian. You think this is about winning or losing? But this is not that kind of war. What kind of war is it? The kind where we show the galaxy what happens when someone attacks human children. Mayor O did not understand, but he trusted Colonel Nam. He had seen her prepare for emergencies before. She was always calm and always had a plan. What do you need from me? Mayor O asked. Tell your people to go to the underground shelters. Tell them this is a drill that might last several weeks. Make sure every family has food and water for a month. And the truth? Colonel Nam looked out at the city where children were playing and families were living normal lives. The truth is that some of those children will grow up to remember this day. And when they do, they will make sure nothing like it ever happens again. Prince Velthor was excited as his invasion fleet approached New Bizan. This would be his first real military command. He planned to conquer the human world quickly and brutally. Then he would broadcast the victory across the galaxy to show everyone that humans were weak. How long until we reach the planet? Prince Velthor asked his fleet commander. 18 hours, Your Highness. Our intelligence says the humans have minimal defenses. We should be able to land and secure the major cities within days. Prince Velthor smiled. He had chosen New Bizan specifically because it looked helpless. No major military bases, no strategic weapons, just farmers and families. It would be an easy victory that would make him famous. Prepare the landing forces, Prince Velthor ordered. I want this planet conquered quickly. Make sure to capture some humans alive for questioning. I want to know where their other colonies are. Princess Anya Velthor was not on the invasion fleet. She had begged her brother not to attack a civilian world, but he had laughed at her concerns. Now she waited on the Draconian homeworld, watching the news broadcasts and praying that her fears were wrong. Commander Thekanal was leading the advance. Scouts. As his ships approached New Bizan, he studied the intelligence reports. Something bothered him about this mission, but he could not identify what it was. Sir, his sensor operator reported, we are detecting minimal military activity. On the planet's surface, a few defense satellites, some ground-based weapons, Nothing that can seriously threaten our fleet? Commander the Colonel nodded, but his unease grew stronger. In his experience, weak enemies either ran away or begged for mercy. But the humans on New Bizan were doing neither. They were just waiting. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through. Colonel Nam Sujin's voice was calm and professional. Draconian Fleet. This is Colonel Nam of the New Bizan Defense Force. You are approaching a civilian world in violation of galactic law. Turn back now, and no harm will come to you. Commander Thekanol was surprised by the message. The human commander sounded like she was offering mercy to a vastly superior force. It made no tactical sense. Human commander, Commander Thekanol replied, you are outnumbered 20-1. Surrender your world and your people will not be harmed. I appreciate the offer, Colonel Nam said politely, but I must decline. New Bizan is under human protection. If you land troops on this world, you will be considered invaders and treated accordingly. Commander Thekanol ended the transmission and stared at his communications officer. The human commander had just threatened a fleet of 200 ships, with 15,000 defenders. Either she was insane or she knew something he did not on New Bizan. Colonel Nam finished her transmission and turned to her staff. All civilians are in the shelters? Yes, ma'am. The last group entered the underground complexes an hour ago. Weapons systems? All defense platforms are active. Reserves are in position. Special packages are ready for deployment. Colonel Nam nodded. The special packages were weapons that most civilized species considered too cruel for warfare. The humans had learned long ago that some enemies only understood cruelty. Remember, Colonel Nam told her officers, we are not trying to win this battle. We are trying to send a message. Every Draconian who lands on this planet must learn something that they will never forget. The invasion began at dawn. Prince Velthar's ships filled the sky above New Bizan like dark clouds. Landing craft descended toward the major cities, carrying thousands of Draconian soldiers who expected an easy victory, but as the first Draconian troops landed, they found empty cities. No crowds of humans to surrender, no government officials to negotiate with, just empty streets and silent buildings. Where are the humans? Captain Zethmer asked as his soldiers searched the capital city. Underground, sir. Intelligence indicates extensive tunnel systems under every major settlement. Captain Zethmer smiled, humans hiding in holes like animals. It was exactly what he expected from such a weak species, but as his soldiers began exploring the tunnels, they discovered that the humans had not built shelters. They had built a trap. The first Draconian squad to enter the underground complex never came back out. Neither did the second squad sent to find them. By the time Captain Zethmer realized something was wrong, half his battalion was missing. What is happening down there? He demanded. Unknown, sir. We lost contact with all units that entered the tunnel systems. No bodies found, no weapons discharged, no signs of struggle. Captain Zethmer felt a chill run down his spine. Soldiers did not just disappear without a trace. Above ground, the Draconian forces tried to establish control of the empty cities, but everywhere they went, things went wrong. Equipment failed mysteriously. Communications were jammed. Soldiers reported feeling watched, but no enemies could be found. Colonel Nam watched the invasion from her command center deep underground. The tunnels of New Bizan were not just shelters. They were a vast network of defensive positions connected by passages that only humans knew about. Status report, Colonel Nam requested. Enemy forces have landed at all primary targets, estimated 300,000 troops on the ground. They are attempting to secure the major cities. And our people? All reserve units are in position. Phase 1 is complete. Colonel Nam smiled coldly. Phase 1 was making the enemy feel confident. Phase 2 would be very different. Initiate Phase 2, Colonel Nam ordered, across New Bizan. The real battle began. But it was not the kind of battle that the Draconians expected. There were no armies facing each other across battlefields. There were no dramatic charges or heroic last stands. Instead, there was terror. Draconian soldiers began dying in ways that made no sense. Patrols would enter buildings and never come out. Guards would be found dead at their posts with no wounds and no signs of struggle. Equipment would explode for no reason, killing everyone nearby. Captain Zethmer tried to maintain control, but his forces were falling apart. His soldiers were afraid to enter buildings, afraid to patrol alone, afraid to sleep. They had come to conquer farmers, but they were fighting ghosts. "Sir," one of his lieutenants reported, "we have lost contact with the entire 3rd Battalion. They were securing the Eastern District this morning. Now they are just done." "What do you mean, gone?" "Their equipment is still there, their vehicles are still there, but no soldiers. No bodies, no signs of what happened to them." "Captain." Zethmer realized that he was not fighting a normal war. The humans were not trying to defend their cities in the traditional way. Supreme Commander Kang Jisoo stood in the war room deep beneath Seoul. Around her, hundreds of screens showed star maps, fleet positions, and intelligence reports from across the galaxy. She had been preparing for this moment for months, but she had hoped it would never come. The message from New Bizan had changed everything. When Prince Velther ordered the bombing of civilian areas, he had crossed a line that humans never forgave. There would be no more diplomacy, no more warnings, no more chances for peace. Status of the mobilization? Commander Kang asked her. "Aid. All reserve fleets are moving to combat positions. Manufacturing centers have switched to wartime production. The conscription orders will be issued within the hour." Commander Kang nodded. Across human space, a transformation was beginning. The peaceful merchant ships were revealing hidden weapon systems. The scientific research stations were activating military production lines. The civilian population was preparing for total war. Dr. Park Hyun-woo was working in his laboratory on Europa when the activation order arrived. For 20 years, he had told people that he studied agricultural optimization. It was not exactly a lie. He did study how to make things grow better, but he also studied how to make sure they never grew again. "Dr. Park," his assistant said nervously, "we have received authorization code Black. All projects are to be activated immediately." Dr. Park looked at the sealed containers in his laboratory. Inside were weapons that had been developed over decades of careful research, weapons that could kill specific species while leaving others unharmed, weapons that could destroy entire worlds without touching the planets themselves. "Begin production of packages 7 through 15, Dr. Park said calmly, "and send a message to the deployment teams. Tell them we are going to need a lot more delivery systems." Captain Im Seung-woo received his orders while his unit was training on Mars. His soldiers were officially listed as Special Operations Engineers. They built bridges, repaired equipment, and helped with construction projects across human space. At least, that was what their public record said. In reality, they were humanity's most elite killers. "Gentlemen," Captain Im said to his assembled troops, "we have just received deployment orders. Our target is the draconian command structure. We will be removing their ability to make decisions." His soldiers nodded without surprise. They had been training for missions like this their entire careers. They knew every draconian military base, every command center, every leader's personal habits. They had been watching and waiting for years. "What about civilian casualties?" one soldier asked. "Minimize them when possible," Captain Im replied. "But remember, they bombed our children. If civilians get in the way, that is their choice." Prince Velther was becoming desperate on New Bizan. His invasion force was being destroyed piece by piece. Every night, more of his soldiers disappeared. Every day, his remaining troops became more frightened and less effective. "Your Highness," Commander the Colonel reported, "we have lost over 200,000 soldiers. The humans are using tactics we have never seen before. They fight like they are already dead." "How can farmers be defeating my best troops?" Prince Velther screamed. "They are not fighting like farmers. They are fighting like something else, something that enjoys killing us." Commander Thekanal had been having nightmares since the invasion began. He had seen the bodies of his soldiers. Some had been killed efficiently, almost surgically. Others had been killed in ways that seemed designed to spread fear. The humans We're sending a message with every death. We are not like other species. Sir, a communications officer interrupted, we are receiving reports from across the Empire. Human ships are appearing in our territory. Prince Velthor spun around. What? Ships? How many? Unknown, sir. They seem to come from nowhere, attack our facilities, and disappear. We have lost 17 bases in the past 6 hours. High Consul Mordic of the Reptilian Hegemony was in his palace when the first reports arrived. Human ships had attacked 3 of his border worlds simultaneously. The attacks were precise and devastating. Military targets were completely destroyed, but civilian areas were left untouched. How did they know exactly where our weapons were stored? Consul Morduck demanded. How did they know which buildings contained our command centers? His intelligence. Chief looked uncomfortable. Sir, it appears that humans have been gathering detailed information about our military facilities for decades. They know more about our defenses than we do. Consul Morduck felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. If humans had been spying on them for so long, what else did they know? What else had they been preparing for? Elder Kethmoran sat in his chambers, on the neutral world of Sanctuary, watching the galactic news feeds. The reports were fragmentary and confused, but the pattern was clear. Humanity had gone to war, and they were fighting like nothing the galaxy had seen before. A younger delegate from the Aquarian Collective came to see him. She was frightened and desperate for advice. Elder, she said, the humans are attacking everyone who supported the Draconians. My people voted in favor of their mining restrictions. Will we be next? Elder Kethmoran looked at her with sad, ancient eyes. Child, you still do not understand what is happening. This is not about mining, rights, or political votes. This is about something much more fundamental. What do you mean? The humans offered the galaxy a choice, peace or war. The younger species chose war. Now they are learning what human war really means. The delegate was confused. But humans have been peaceful for centuries. How can they be so effective at fighting? Elder Kethmoran stood up and walked to his window. Outside, ships from dozens of species were fleeing toward neutral space, running from the spreading human offensive. You think humans forgot how to fight because they stopped fighting, the elder said. But humans never stop preparing for war. They just hope they will never need to use what they have prepared. What have they prepared? Everything. Elder Kethmoran's voice was heavy with sorrow. They have prepared for every possible threat, every potential enemy, every conceivable scenario. For 200 years, while other species were building monuments to their glory, humans were building the most sophisticated military machine in galactic history. Admiral Beijuyun commanded the human fleet designated Final Solution. The name was not chosen carelessly. This fleet existed for one purpose: to end threats permanently. Admiral, her intelligence officer reported, we have confirmed the locations of all Draconian manufacturing worlds. The shipyards, the weapon factories, the training centers, and their civilian populations evacuated to the inner systems. As expected, the Draconians are trying to protect their non-combatants. Admiral Bay nodded approvingly. Even in war, humans preferred to avoid unnecessary civilian casualties, but they would not allow enemy military capacity to survive. Begin. The sterilization protocols? Admiral Bay ordered. I want every Draconian military facility reduced to atoms. Every shipyard, every weapon factory, every training ground. When we are done, they will not be able to build so much as a kitchen knife. The attack on the Draconian industrial worlds began at exactly 0300 Galactic Standard Time. Human ships appeared simultaneously at 17 different star systems. The attacks were coordinated with precision that amazed even military experts from other species. In less than 6 hours, the entire Draconian military-industrial complex ceased to exist. Sergeant Major Huang Inho led his ground forces onto the Draconian military world of Drakethor. His mission was simple: eliminate all enemy resistance and capture their strategic command center. But what his troops found was not what they expected. The Draconian defenders were not fighting with their Usual pride and arrogance. They were terrified. Sergeant Major, one of his soldiers reported, the enemy troops are surrendering without fighting. They are begging us not to hurt them. Sergeant Major Wang felt no satisfaction in this easy victory. These draconian soldiers were not the ones who had bombed human children, but they were part of the same military machine, and that machine had to be destroyed completely. Accept their surrender, Sergeant Major Huang ordered. But make sure they understand their empire is finished. If any draconian military unit ever threatens human civilians again, there will be no more surrenders accepted. Princess Anya Velther was in the imperial palace when the reports started coming in. Military world after military world was falling to human attacks. The casualty reports were staggering, but not in the way she expected. The humans were not killing everyone they defeated. Instead, they were destroying the draconian ability to make war while leaving the people alive to witness their defeat. "Where is my brother?" Princess Anya asked desperately. "Still on New Bizin, Your Highness. His fleet is trapped there. The humans have surrounded the entire system." Princess Anya realized that her brother had made the worst mistake in draconian history. He had not just attacked humans. He had given them a reason to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Consul Prime Zethara of the neutral systems called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the human offensive that was reshaping galactic politics. "We must demand that the humans stop this aggression," demanded the delegate from the Crystalline Republic. "And how do you suggest we do that?" Admiral Bei Jiyun stood on the bridge of her flagship as it approached the draconian homeworld. Behind her, the largest human fleet ever assembled moved through space like a dark tide. 2,000 ships, each one carrying weapons that could crack planets, but Admiral Bei was not here to destroy worlds. She was here to end the concept of draconian military power forever. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the draconian home fleet is waiting for us. 300 ships in defensive formation around their homeworld." Admiral Bei studied the enemy formation. Once, those ships had seemed powerful and threatening. Now, they looked like toys compared to what humanity had brought to bear. "Any communication from their leadership?" "Yes, ma'am. They are requesting negotiations." Admiral Bei smiled coldly. "Tell them that the time for negotiations ended when they bombed New Bizin. Today is about consequences." On the draconian homeworld, Princess Anya Velther watched the approaching human fleet through the palace's observation dome. Each human ship was larger than anything the draconians had ever built, and there were so many of them. "How did they build so many ships so quickly?" she asked her military advisor. "They did not build them quickly, Your Highness. Intelligence suggests these ships have existed for decades. The humans have been preparing for a war like this for generations." Princess Anya felt sick to her stomach. While her people had been celebrating their strength and mocking human weakness, the humans had been quietly building the means to destroy them completely. The battle for the draconian homeworld lasted exactly 47 minutes. The human fleet did not engage the enemy ships directly. Instead, they used weapons that targeted the draconian ship's power systems, life support, and navigation. Within minutes, the entire home fleet was drifting helplessly in space. Then the humans did something that no one expected. They rescued the draconian crews. "This is Admiral Bei of the Human Final Solution Fleet," her voice echoed across all communication channels. "Attention all draconian military personnel. Your empire's ability to wage war has been permanently ended. However, your lives have not. You will be evacuated to civilian transport ships and relocated to worlds where you can live peacefully." Sergeant Major Huang Inho led the ground forces that landed on the draconian capital. His mission was to secure all military installations and government buildings. But as his troops moved through the city, they found something unexpected. The draconian civilians were not hiding in fear. Instead, they lined the streets, watching the human soldiers with a mixture of curiosity and relief. "Sergeant Major," one of his soldiers reported, "the civilians are trying to give us food and flowers. They seem grateful that we are here." Sergeant Major Huang was confused until he spoke with some of the local residents. What he learned shocked him. The military has been taking our children for years, an elderly Draconian explained, forcing them to become soldiers, taking our food to feed their armies. We are tired of living in fear of our own government. Sergeant Major Huang realized that the Draconian Empire had been as much a prison for its own people as a threat to others. The humans had not just defeated an enemy. They had liberated millions of beings who had been suffering under military rule. Dr. Park Hyunwoo arrived on the Draconian homeworld 3 days after the conquest. His job was to ensure that the planet's military production facilities could never be rebuilt. But as he studied the industrial complexes, he made a disturbing discovery. These factories, he told Admiral Bay, they were not just making weapons for the Draconian military. They were making weapons for export to dozens of other species. Admiral Bay studied the production records that Dr. Park had uncovered. The Draconian Empire had been arming aggressive species across the galaxy. They had been deliberately spreading conflict and instability. How many species were buying Draconian weapons? At least 40 that we can identify, including several that are currently threatening their neighbors. Admiral Bay made a decision that would reshape galactic politics. Send messages to all species that purchased Draconian military equipment. Tell them they have 30 days to surrender those weapons to human forces. Any species that refuses will be treated as a military threat. The ultimatum sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Species that had never even heard of humans were suddenly being told to surrender their most advanced weapons or face the same fate as the Draconians. Hi. Consul Morduk of the Reptilian Hegemony called an emergency meeting of his war council. His species had purchased thousands of Draconian weapons over the past decade. Now the humans were demanding that he give them up. What if we refuse? One of his generals asked. Then we become the next target of human military action, Consul Morduk replied grimly. And based on what happened to the Draconians, that would mean the end of our civilization. So we just surrender? Give up our sovereignty to human demands? Consul Morduk looked around the table at his fellow leaders. They were proud, aggressive beings who had never backed down from a fight, but they were also practical enough to recognize reality. Yes, Consul Morduk said finally. We give up our weapons and hope that the humans are more merciful than we would be in their position. Elder Kethmoran received a visit from Captain Im Sangwa at his residence on Sanctuary. The human special forces commander looked tired but determined. Elder, Captain Im said respectfully, I have been sent to ask for your advice. About what, young warrior? About what comes next. We have defeated the immediate threats to human security, but there are still hundreds of species that could become threats in the future. My commanders want to know how far we should go. Elder Kethmoran studied the human officer carefully. Captain Im was a killer, but he was also troubled by the scope of what humanity was considering. You are asking whether you should conquer the entire galaxy, the elder said. We have the capability, Captain Im admitted. Our fleets could defeat any combination of species that might oppose us. But is that what we should do? Elder Kethmoran was quiet for a long time. Finally, he stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. In my 50,000 years of life, the elder said, I have seen many species rise to dominate their regions of space. Most of them used their power to conquer and control. They built empires that lasted for millennia but eventually collapsed from internal corruption or external rebellion. And humans? Humans are different. You do not seek to rule others, you seek to ensure your own survival. The question is whether you can achieve security without becoming the thing you are fighting against. Captain Im thought about this carefully. What would you advise? Create a galaxy where no species can threaten another with extinction. But do not try to control how they live their lives. Be the guardians of peace, not the rulers of the universe. Princess Anya Velthor was brought before Admiral Bay 3 weeks after the conquest of her homeworld. She expected to be executed or imprisoned. Instead, she found herself in a comfortable meeting room being offered tea. Your Highness, Admiral Bay said politely, We need to discuss the future of your people. You mean what is left of my people? Princess Anya replied bitterly. Your military is gone, Admiral Bay agreed. Your weapons are destroyed. Your ability to threaten others has been eliminated. But your people remain. The question is what they will do now. Princess Anya was confused. You are not going to kill us? Why would we? You are no longer a threat. Killing you would serve? No purpose except revenge, and humans have learned that revenge is a luxury we cannot afford. Then what do you want from us? Admiral Bay leaned forward. We want you to rebuild your civilization. But this time, build it around creation instead of destruction. Focus on art, science, exploration. Contribute something positive to the galaxy. And if we refuse, then you will live quietly on the worlds we assign to you, and history will forget. The Draconians ever existed? The choice is yours? Princess Anya realized that the humans were offering her people something that no conquering army had ever offered. Before, a second chance, the reptilian hegemony was the first major power to formally surrender to human demands. High Consul Mordek personally delivered his species' entire arsenal of advanced weapons to a human collection fleet. This is humiliating, one of his generals complained. This is survival, Consul Mordek corrected. The humans have shown us. What happens to species that choose pride over wisdom? Other species quickly followed the reptilian example. Within 6 months, over 200 civilizations had voluntarily disarmed their most dangerous weapons and placed themselves under human protection. But not everyone was willing to accept the new order. The Crystalline Republic, a collection of silicon-based life forms, decided to resist human demands. They formed an alliance with 15 other species and declared war on humanity. The war lasted 3 days. Admiral Bay's fleet arrived at the Crystalline Republic's primary world and demonstrated a weapon that had never been used before. It targeted the specific molecular structure of crystalline life forms, dissolving their bodies harmlessly but completely. The entire Crystalline Republic ceased to exist in a matter of hours. This is what happens, Admiral Bay broadcast to the galaxy, when species choose warfare over wisdom. We do not want to rule you. We do not want to control you. 5 years had passed since the end of the human war. President Yoon Jeong stood at the podium in the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers on Viridian Prime. The hall was smaller now, with only 335 species represented instead of the original 847. Some species had been destroyed in the war. Others had been peacefully relocated to worlds where they could live without threatening their neighbors. Fellow beings of the galaxy, President Yoon began, we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building a better future. In the audience, representatives from across the galaxy listened carefully. The human president was a civilian leader, not a military commander. This was humanity's way of showing that the war was truly over. Admiral Park Ji-won, now Supreme Fleet Commander, sat in the front row wearing a simple dress uniform. Her fleet still patrolled the galaxy, but their role had changed. They were no longer instruments of war, but guardians of peace. We did not choose to become the galaxy's protectors, President Yoon continued. This responsibility was forced upon us by those who mistook our desire for peace as a sign of weakness. But we have accepted this burden, and we will carry it with honor. Elder Kethmoran, now the oldest living being in the galaxy, listened from his special seat. He had watched the transformation of galactic civilization with wonder and concern. The humans had kept their promise to be guardians rather than rulers. But the cost had been enormous. Director Ko Minseok managed the resettlement programs from his office on Earth. His job was to help the surviving species find new homes and new purposes. Many former warrior races were learning to be farmers, artists, and scientists. It was not easy, but it was possible. The draconian agricultural colonies are exceeding all expectations, Director Ko reported to President Yoon. Princess Anya's leadership has been remarkable. They are now supplying food to 6 different star systems. Princess Anya Velther had indeed become a leader, but not the kind her brother had been. Instead of commanding armies, she led farmers and teachers. Instead of conquering worlds, she helped heal them. My people were warriors for so long that we forgot how to create, Princess Anya had told Director Ko during one of their meetings. The humans gave us a chance to remember who we could be instead of who we had been. The Memorial of Warnings was completed in the 3rd year after the war. It was a vast database containing every ignored warning throughout galactic history. Students from across the galaxy came to study these lessons and understand how catastrophic wars began. Elder Cathmoran served as the chief curator, working with human historians to preserve the memory of past mistakes. His favorite section was dedicated to the warnings that had been heeded, the wars that had been prevented by wisdom instead of force. Remember, Elder Cathmoran would tell visiting students, the greatest victory is the battle that never needs to be fought. High Consul Mordek had become an unexpected ally of the New Order. After surrendering his weapons, he had discovered that his people were much happier as traders and explorers than as conquerors. The reptilian hegemony had transformed into the Reptilian Trade Federation, supplying rare minerals to peaceful civilizations across the galaxy. I spent 40 years preparing for wars that brought nothing but suffering, Consul Mordek had told Admiral Park during a diplomatic meeting. These past 5 years of peace have brought more prosperity to my people than centuries of conquest. The Galactic Academy on Earth graduated its first class in the 5th year after the war. Young beings from dozens of species had studied together, learning both their own histories and the histories of others. They were the first generation to grow up under human protection, and they saw the galaxy differently than their parents had. "We are all citizens of the same galaxy," said Karavelshon, a young draconian who gave the graduation speech. The wars of the past were fought by beings who saw differences instead of similarities. We have learned to see what unites us instead of what divides us. But not everyone was happy with the new order. Some species chafed under human oversight, feeling that their independence had been taken away. There were occasional protests and minor rebellions, but they were handled carefully by human peacekeepers. Captain Im Seonghwa. Now, a colonel led the peaceful resolution teams that responded to these incidents. His job was to solve problems without violence whenever possible. "We cannot rule through fear," Colonel Ahmed explained to his teams. "We must earn the respect of the galaxy through our actions, not our weapons." Dr. Park Yunwoo had transitioned from making weapons to making medicines. His research stations now developed cures for diseases that affected multiple species. The same knowledge that had once created biological weapons now created treatments that saved millions of lives. "Science should serve life, not death," Dr. Park had said when asked about his career change. "We have seen enough death to last 1,000 lifetimes." The first major test of the new order came in the 4th year when 2 minor species, the Zephyrians and the Voltans, began fighting over a disputed star system. Both sides had legitimate claims to the territory, and their conflict was escalating toward all-out war. Supreme Fleet Commander Park received the reports with concern. This was exactly the kind of situation that had led to galactic wars in the past. "Send the mediation fleet," Admiral Park ordered, "and make sure both sides understand that we will not allow this conflict to spread." The human mediation fleet arrived at the disputed system not as conquerors but as peacekeepers. They enforced a ceasefire and brought both sides to the negotiating table. After months of careful diplomacy, they helped the Zephyrians and Voltans reach a compromise that satisfied both species. "This is how conflicts should be resolved," Admiral Park had said afterward. "Through words, not weapons." Elder Cathmoran was often asked whether he thought the galaxy was better under human protection. His answer was always complex and thoughtful. "The galaxy is safer now," the elder would say. "But safety comes at a price. Some species have lost their independence. Others have lost their sense of purpose. The question is whether these costs are worth the peace we have achieved." "And what do you think?" students would ask. "I think the humans have given us something precious. Time. Time to learn from our mistakes. Time to grow beyond our violent instincts. Time to become better than we were. What we do with this time will determine whether their sacrifice was worthwhile." President Yun Jiong faced her own challenges as the leader of the species that had become the galaxy's guardians. Many humans were tired of carrying the burden of galactic peace. They wanted to return to their own worlds and live simple lives. "We never asked to rule the galaxy," President Yun said during a cabinet meeting. "But now that we have this responsibility, we cannot abandon it. Too many beings depend on us for protection." "But for how long?" asked her defense minister. "Can we maintain this role forever?" "Until the galaxy learns to protect itself," President Yun replied. "Until species can resolve their conflicts without resorting to extinction-level warfare. Until the lessons of the war are so deeply learned that they can never be forgotten." The Galactic Covenant was signed in the 5th year after the war. It was an agreement between all surviving species that established basic principles for interstellar relations. No species could develop weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. No species could threaten another with extinction. All conflicts would be submitted to human arbitration if they could not be resolved peacefully. "This covenant is not about human dominance," President Yun explained during the signing ceremony. "It is about ensuring that the horrors of the past 5 years never happen again." But even as the galaxy celebrated this achievement, some wondered, what would happen when humanity itself might need to be stopped? Elder Kethmoran had raised this question privately with President Yun. "What if humans become corrupted by power?" The elder had asked, "What if you become the threat that others must defend against?" "Then I hope," President Yun had replied, "that someone will have the wisdom to warn the galaxy about us, just as you warned them about the consequences of challenging us." The conversation had ended with both leaders understanding that eternal vigilance was the price of peace, and that even guardians must be watched. As the years passed, a new generation grew up that had never known galactic war. These young beings, raised under human protection, began to take peace for granted. Some historians worried that the lessons of the war would be forgotten as those who remembered it grew old and died. This concern led to the establishment of the Living Memory Project. Veterans from all sides of the conflict were interviewed and their stories preserved for future generations. Even former enemies like Princess Anya and High Consul Mordek participated, sharing their experiences of how pride and arrogance had led to catastrophe. "We must never let the galaxy forget," Elder Kethmoran said during the project's launch, "that peace is not the natural state of civilized beings. Peace is something that must be chosen again and again by every generation." Director Ko Minsiak's resettlement programs had been so successful that former warrior species were now leading peaceful, productive lives across the galaxy. The Draconians had become renowned agriculturalists. The Reptilians had become master traders.